Drone warfare. Modern warfare undoubtedly requires high-tech, high lethal weapons, such as high stealth, high precision, high power, high speed of sound, high range ammunition, etc. The biggest advantage of these weapons is that they have the power of lethal weapon, which, if properly utilized, can instantly change the battlefield situation at a certain stage or at a certain node. However, these weapons also have a common disadvantage of high cost, slow production speed, low production capacity, weak production chain, expensive, and difficult to withstand continuous large-scale consumption. A high-intensity war of attrition requires not only a small number of decisive weapons, but also a large number of low-cost weapons that are not necessarily very powerful, not necessarily very strong in terms of surprise and defense capabilities, not necessarily very high in maturity, and not necessarily technologically advanced, which can be continuously supplied through mass production. They can be produced in large quantities to meet the urgent needs of war, and under the support of the local information system of small coalition and small synergy, they can fight against the high with the low, consume the high with the low, and overcome the strong with the weak. At first, when launching air attacks, Russia mainly used cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and hypersonic missiles, which are expensive, often hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. With the increasing frequency and scale of air attacks, the cost is too high, the production capacity is insufficient, and the risk of running out of stocks is gradually highlighted. In the West's advanced long, medium and short-range air defense systems are entering the Ukraine one after another. The slower subsonic cruise missiles have been intercepted. The number of intercepted slower subsonic cruise missiles has been increasing, which has seriously weakened the effectiveness of air strikes. Russia had to change its way of thinking and imported the Witness 136 suicide drone, self-produced uranium-2, from Iran, and used a large number of inexpensive and affordable airborne motorcycles as the opening spearhead. The use of inexpensive and affordable small air motorcycles as pioneers and the use of various types of missiles to accomplish air attack missions have achieved a better balance between costs and benefits. It is obvious from the patterns of these air raids that Russia has adopted the tactics of joint operations by land, sea, and air forces. After obtaining precise information about the target, it first massively mobilized low-technology and low-cost land-launched uranium-2 suicide drones to lure Ukraine into firing a large number of long, medium and short-range anti-aircraft missiles that are limited in number and expensive, and then, when the Ukrainian air defense system was busy with its air defense system, the Russian air defense system was busy with its air defense system. While the Ukrainian air defense system was busy dealing with low, small, and slow targets, the Ukrainian air defense system was immediately followed by high-tech and high-precision air-launched Dagger hypersonic missiles, air-launched Kh-101/555 cruise missiles, ship-launched 3M14 muzzle cruise missiles and 3M14 muzzle cruise missiles. The land-launched Iskander-M/K ballistic/cruise missiles and other missiles arrived in a swift and furious manner. In particular, the roof attack on the command center building of the 56th Mobile Brigade perfectly demonstrated the complete killing chain of Russia from discovery, positioning, tracking, aiming, destruction to evaluation, which can never be done without the support of the information-based system. As we all know, Russia's informatization capability has been relatively weak. At the beginning of the war, the Russian tactical groups need Su-34/24/25 jets, Ka-52/Me-28/Me-35 attack helicopters and BM-30 Tornado long-range rocket support, etc., need to be reported to the approval of the layers, and even up to the level of the group army and the battle area, and also with the Air Force, and battle area. The Russians have also been working with the Air Force, the Army, and the artillery to coordinate across military branches, and the process is very cumbersome, and by the time the approval process is complete, it will have long since become subject to a lapse in the war. Recently, Russia has issued a new type of tactical information chain system to the main frontline combat units, gradually opening up the information blockages of all military branches, creating good technical conditions for the formation of local small system combat capabilities in important directions, key areas, and among important combat units. In terms of air operations, Russia will participate in the Tu-95 bomber group for Kh-101/555 delivery, the MiG-31 fighter group for Dagger delivery, the naval frigate fleet for Caliber launching, and the Iskander fleet for the Dagger delivery. Iskander M/K launch mission, Army Missile Regiment and Uranium-2 drone unit, through the new Tactical Information Chain System, with the Federal Intelligence Center, Theater Intelligence Center and Special Military Operations Command, connected to the Federal Intelligence Center, Theater Intelligence Center and Special Military Operations Command. Through the new Tactical Data Link System, the FIC, the Theater Intelligence Center and the Special Military Operations Command, they are linked into an information interconnection and interoperability whole, forming a small joint operation system, which can distribute target intelligence information and fire raid plans in real time, and unify the command of the three military forces to conduct the joint air attack operation. The ground is most afraid of the sky. This is almost an unbreakable truth in the war. The initiative of the war is always in the hands of the aerial attack party, and the defending party is almost always in a passive situation, even if the part of the missiles, drones, fell down on their own sites, will still cause great losses, especially urban air defense. The battle is especially important for urban air defense. The slow-flying Uranium-2 drone, although the chance of being intercepted is higher, but once it flies into the city, the ear-splitting sound of the whistling tail is very likely to cause panic among the public, and Ukraine almost does not dare to intercept it in the urban areas because once the drone is hit by anti-aircraft missiles or artillery shells, it will be detonated at an ultra-low altitude and eject a large amount of debris, which will have an adverse effect on the pedestrians, vehicles, and people on the streets. Once hit by anti-aircraft missiles or artillery shells, the drone will detonate at ultra-low altitude and eject a large amount of debris, causing extensive collateral damage to pedestrians, vehicles, buildings, and other ground facilities on the streets. Even if Uranium-2 has not achieved much result in battle, as long as it exists, it will always be the sword of Damocles hanging over the head of Ukraine. In particular, large-scale saturated clustering attack can effectively block the channels of search and guidance of the Ukrainian air defense system, and quickly exhaust the number of Ukrainian air defense systems. It can effectively block the search and guidance channels of Ukraine's air defense system and rapidly exhaust Ukraine's limited air defense missile resources. Russia's uranium, February production capacity has reached 500, the unit price of less than 1.7 million rubles, about $20,000, with a large number of inexpensive uranium with the cover, Russia's high super/cruise/ballistic missiles to significantly increase the breakout rate, and effectively save the cost of the war. The Russian Defense Ministry often publishes. The Russian Ministry of Defense often releases war reports on the destruction of a large number of Ukrainian command posts, ammunition depots, S-300 air defense systems, and foreign mercenary bases, etc. On the contrary, there are videos, pictures, and wreckage of Russian warplanes being shot down by the Ukrainian ground-based air defense system, and there is even news that the Russian Air Force does not dare to go out due to the fear of the NATO's strong airborne early warning capability and Ukrainian ground-based anti-aircraft missiles. In fact, even if they do go out, they seldom enter into the airspace. In fact, even if they did, they seldom entered Ukrainian airspace. No matter as many as 84 Tu-160, Tu-95, Tu-22 series strategic bombers, just the advanced main fighters such as Su-35S/30SM/34M, Kh-31P anti-radiation missiles, L-265M Hibernia/Tarantula, and so on, they are not able to enter Ukrainian airspace. Poison Spider, electronic warfare pods and other tough suppression equipment are sufficient to crush Ukraine's weak air defense system, which is riddled with problems and loopholes. Ukraine knows very well that only relying on dozens of old MiG-29, Su-27/24/25 and other fighters in its hands is not a match for Russia at all. Therefore, Ukraine has adopted the asymmetric tactic of land to control airspace by relying on the old-fashioned Soviet S-300, Beach, Tonto, Beach, and Tonto. On May 13, Russia launched an air defense system in Bryansk Oblast, which was located in the distance from Russia and Ukraine, and the Russian air defense system, which was assisted by the West, was supported by NATO's early warning intelligence. On May 13, Russia was ambushed by Ukrainian anti-aircraft missiles on its own territory in the Bryansk region, about 50 kilometers from the Russian-Ukrainian border, and one Su-35 fighter, one Su-34 fighter bomber, and two Mi-8 multi-purpose helicopters were shot down, with 9 pilots killed, which is the worst and darkest day for Russia since the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, and for the first time it was chased to its home to be beaten up, so that the West and its followers had enough to laugh about. The West and its followers have been laughing their asses off. So far, Russia has lost more than 60 Su-35S/30 SM/34/24/25 fighters and more than 50 Mi-24/28 and Ka-52 helicopters. With the assistance of the West, advanced air defense systems such as American-made long-range Patriot/medium-range NASAMS, European-made long-range SAMP/Mamba, German-made medium-range IRIST and British-made short-range Storm, etc., continue to be added to the Ukrainian air defense system, and the Ukrainian air defense system has become more and more important. As these advanced air defense systems continue to be added to the Ukrainian combat sequence, Russian air defense suppression will become even more difficult. In order to achieve this, Russia has actively innovated its tactics by changing the previous method of air force to be responsible for air defense and suppression, and adopting the air-ground unity of effort, whereby the UHF missiles and missiles are coordinated with each other, and manned aircrafts and unmanned aircrafts are closely coordinated, and the Air Force regiments, naval frigate formations, Army missile regiments, UAVs and missiles, and the intelligence centers of the battle zones, etc., which are involved in air defense and suppression are connected into an information network as a whole by means of the Information Transfer and Distribution System. The information network integrates the Air Force groups, Navy frigates, Army missile groups, drone/tanker units, and theater intelligence centers to form a localized combat system under the unified command of the Air Force Theater Command, which has achieved remarkable results in the battle. On May 16, 2023, Russia attacked the Ukrainian Patriot PAC-3 anti-missile system deployed at the Giuliani Airport near Kiev by first deploying a large number of Geranium-2 suicide drones, and as they approached the Ukrainian anti-missile position, the Caliber cruise missiles rushed to the airspace over the target area in time and were wrapped up with the drones. When approaching the Ukrainian anti-missile position, the Caliber cruise missiles rushed to the airspace above the target area on time, wrapped up with the drones, and launched attacks on such key installations as the Patriot's command vehicle, radar vehicle, launch vehicle, and power supply vehicle at the same time, which caused the Ukrainian Air Defense Forces to be in a mess, and they fired 32 PAC-3 CBS in a row in 2 minutes. On May 27, Russia adopted the same tactic by using the Geranium missile to launch an attack on the Ukrainian Air Defense Force. On May 27, using the same method of warfare, the Russian Geranium-2 once again covered a Dagger hypersonic missile and successfully destroyed a Ukrainian Patriot PAC-3 reconnaissance radar vehicle. In addition to playing a supporting role, Geranium-2 also took the initiative to attack the target and successfully destroyed an S-300 remote air defense missile system in Ukraine. Video footage showed that before the S-300 launcher could get up, Geranium-2 quickly jumped on the target. The video shows that before the S-300 launcher could stand up, the Geranium-2 came in and exploded, filling the entire missile range with smoke. In March 2023, Russia used for the first time satellite-guided bombs similar to the U.S. Army's Joint Direct Attack Munitions, JDAM, mainly the 1,500 kg UPAB-1500, 500 kg UPAB-500, and 50 kg UPAB-50S, with a maximal range of 60 km, though not immune to remote air defenses such as Patriots. Although they are not immune to remote air defense systems such as Patriot, they can effectively immunize advanced medium-range air defense systems such as NASAMS and IRIS-T-SLM, which are supported by the West. The number of Patriots, SAMP-TS and S-300s in Ukraine's hands is very small, and there are only a few sets of them, mainly deployed in the vicinity of Kiev and Kharkov, which are not yet able to threaten Russian warplanes that are only active in the frontline airspace. Satellite-guided bombs, generally in the ordinary free-fall bombs, add glide range extending guidance elements, including trapezoidal or diamond-shaped wings and satellite navigation chips, etc., used to increase the glide distance of the missile and flight attitude control. Only a large number of stockpiled ordinary missiles to be modified can be. The technology is simple, low cost. Russia has repeatedly used satellite-guided bombs and cruise missiles to carry out air defense and suppression missions. After each successful satellite-guided bomb attack, Ukraine will move its air defense system forward in order to expand the scope of protection, and Russia has seized this law in time. The Su-24/34 often launches satellite-guided bombs outside the safety distance of Ukraine's medium-range air defense missiles, attacking Ukraine's missiles, radars, ammunitions, and command centers, and so on. High-priced targets are used to lure Ukraine's medium and short-range air defense systems to deploy forward, and once Ukraine takes the bait, Russia will immediately launch the Lancet 3M missiles from the ground to quickly destroy these air defense systems, which has almost always been a success. From the Russian official video footage released several times to analyze, a single price of only 3 million rubles, about $35,000, of the Lancet 3M missiles, has destroyed Ukraine's S-300 anti-aircraft missiles, Beach anti-aircraft missiles, Haymaster rocket, M777 howitzer, BMP-2 infantry vehicle, and /TPQ-37 Fire Scout anti-artillery radar, and a Viper M armored gunboat in the Black Sea. M armored gunboat in the Black Sea, etc. There are more than 50 pieces of heavy equipment, each of which is worth millions to tens of millions of US dollars, with an operational exchange ratio of several hundred times. In the fight against Ukraine's summer counter-offensive, the Lancet 3M successfully destroyed a TRML-4D reconnaissance radar of the IRIS-T air defense system, a Leopard 2A6 tank, and a Panther 2A6 tank. The Lancers also destroyed a TRML-4D reconnaissance radar with IRIS-T air defense system, a Leopard 2A6 tank, a MATV armored vehicle, and a Caesar 155mm mounted grenade gun. The Lancet 3M, with a total weight of about 15 kilograms and a combat weight of 5 kilograms, is equipped with a dual-window TV, infrared guides, a maximum range of 70 kilometers, and a cruising time of more than 40 minutes. According to a recent Reuters report, soldiers from different units of the Ukrainian Armored Corps, artillery, and air defenses have generally reported that satellite-guided bombs, cruise missiles, and drones are the main threats they face on the battlefield, and that such threats have grown in recent months and are difficult to defend against, surpassing the threat of Russian artillery fire. In the tragic memories of the Battle of Ugledar at the beginning of the Russian special military operation, the Russian armored forces marching along the highway were suddenly hit by the combined air and ground firepower of the Ukrainian suppressive artillery, Mi-24 attack helicopters, TB2 unmanned aerial vehicles and Javelin missiles, etc. After the first tank was destroyed, other tanks and infantry fighting vehicles turned around in the confusion, which resulted in a series of detonations of the Ukrainian anti-aircraft fire. After the first tank was destroyed, other tanks and infantry fighting vehicles turned around in the confusion, and as a result, a series of anti-tank mines that were pre-positioned in the roadside vegetation in Ukraine were detonated, and the entire Russian armored assault group fell apart in a short time, with wreckage everywhere, and more than 30 T-72/90 tanks and more than 100 BMP-2/3 infantry fighting vehicles were destroyed. Now this scene in the Ukrainian summer counter-offensive appeared, but the roles of the two sides have been exchanged, the Russian almost reverse replication of another Battle of Ugledar. At the beginning of June, Ukraine concentrated 4 brigades to attack the positions of the 70th Morphological Regiment and 291st Morphological Regiment of the 42nd Morphological Division of the 58th Group Army of the Russian Southern Military District, which were stationed in the Kamensk-Kuban region in the northern part of Zaporizhia Oblast. On June 8, the main attacking battalion of Ukraine's 47th Morphological Brigade, which was not protected by strong aviation and artillery fire, took the risk of advancing with a Panther, which was the main attacking battalion. Using Leopard 2A6 main battle tanks as the vanguard, followed by a number of M2A2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, the battalion pushed in columns along a dirt road in the middle of a large area of agricultural land. They pushed forward to the Russian defense positions, but before they got close to the scheduled impact line, they were met with Russian artillery suppression, Lancet 3M missiles, airborne Tornado anti-tank missiles, and man-portable short anti-tank missiles. The whole mechanized infantry battalion was suddenly thrown into chaos as a result of the fierce attacks by the Lancet 3M cruise missiles, airborne Tornado anti-tank missiles, single-armed short anti-tank missiles, and the simple modified FPV rotary wing drones. After the first tank was destroyed, other tanks and infantry vehicles were evacuated to both sides of the road, but they broke into the Russian pre-designed minefields, and many vehicles were hit by mines and exploded, and some of the soldiers jumped out of their vehicles to escape from the same mines, and at least 6 Panther 2A4/A6S and more than 10 M2A2S were destroyed and abandoned, with dozens of soldiers and officers killed or wounded. Without aviation fire support, the 58th Army Group gave up the traditional tank-to-tank armor and ammunition duel tactics against the Panther II and other advanced Western tanks, and carefully organized the information exchange and concerted action among all military types to win the battle. First of all, the defense forces made careful preparations before the battle, dug fortifications for more than a year, constructed reinforced concrete structures, and built a system of solid support points linked by a series of trenches and fire points. In front of each defensive position, there were a number of explosive and non-explosive obstacles, such as mixed minefields for anti-tank/anti-infantry, triangular cones, piles and potholes, anti-tank trenches, and barbed wire nets, etc. Secondly, they built a dense network of tank-to-tank armor and ammunition duel tactics, and carefully organized information exchange and concerted action among all military types to win the battle. Secondly, a dense real-time surveillance and intelligence network has been constructed. In the sky, there are a number of 4/6-axis vertical takeoff and landing rotary wing drones cruising in the air continuously, which are mainly responsible for the surveillance mission beyond 5 kilometers, while on the ground, various types of observation post configurations of laser rangefinders, infrared viewers, microluminescent night vision instruments, artillery mirrors, high-powered binoculars and other optoelectronic equipment are mainly responsible for the surveillance operation within 5 kilometers. Again, the organization and training of a variety of fire groups, suppression fire group, helicopter fire group, drone fire group, infantry anti-tank fire group and missile fire group, and so on, and formulated a detailed and well-planned fire coordination plan, all the officers and men on standby, just waiting for the Ukrainian counterattack. Once the drone detects the Ukrainian armored assault, it immediately calls for remote suppression artillery to open fire first, disrupting its formation and forcing it to start early in the chaos. 152 mm grenades fire red land laser and guided rounds, which have the ability to hit moving targets, and high trajectories that can hit the tops of tanks directly, and the red land rounds have the ability to hit moving targets. It can hit the top of the tank directly with its high trajectory, which is a good way to get a shot off. In case of large-scale armor clusters, the BM-30 Tornado rocket launcher, with a maximum range of 90 km, fires 9K-55K1 anti-tank terminal rounds, and a single shot can fire 60 Motiv 3M warheads in a single volley, which is just like a rain of steel over the armor clusters, and can easily hit the target. It can easily penetrate the top armor of tanks and infantry fighting vehicles. Next, the missile fire group fired Lancet 3M missiles, first destroying the head and tail of 2 tanks or infantry chariots, cutting off Ukraine's forward and backward channels, completely paralyzing Ukraine's entire armored formation, forcing other tanks and infantry chariots to turn in place, make a U-turn and mistakenly enter the roadside minefields, and, when Ukraine was organizing demining operations, the Lancet 3M missiles would be fired at the tanks and infantry chariots. When Ukraine organized demining, the Lancers specialized in mine-clearing vehicles, trapping Ukraine in the minefield and preventing it from moving. When the Ukrainian armored assault group approached the forward position of about 15 kilometers, the drone first locked onto the target, and the attack helicopters such as Ka-52/Me-28 were mobilized to fire the Tornado 9M120/9M127 anti-tank missiles at a long distance, and then they quickly got out of the battlefield, and then the drone was responsible for the relay guidance. The new tactical data chain constructs a synergistic operation mode of A detecting, B shooting, and A guiding between UAVs and attack helicopters, and the attack helicopters only hide outside the range of the close-range anti-aircraft missiles, thus effectively avoiding their own battle damage. A Ukrainian frontline officer complained to the UK's Daily Telegraph that Russian helicopters keep launching attacks, and we don't have any effective way to shoot down these helicopters. When a small number of Ukrainian tanks and infantry charging to within 5 kilometers from the front edge of the defensive positions, infantry anti-tank fire groups acted swiftly, each group of 2 to 3 members, fighting in vehicles, relying on the preset positions, within the effective range of 9 K135 short anti-tank missiles, destroying the target and then immediately move, reacting flexibly and quickly. The response was flexible and quick. The drone fire group, mounting 60-80 seconds mortar rounds, or rifle grenades and grenades on rotary wing drones, attacked Ukrainian infantrymen dismounting from their vehicles or crew members abandoning their tanks and escaping throughout the attack. With the close coordination of many types of troops and the interception of many types of ammunition, even if the Ukrainian tanks were not Leopard 2S, but British Challenger 2S or American M1A2 SEP V4S, the result would be the same. On the other hand, Ukraine did not form a small coalition or small synergy combat system and suffered a lot as a result. The 47th Machine and Infantry Brigade, which has luxurious equipment, did not carry out sufficient reconnaissance and coordination preparations before the war, and did not even figure out the Russian frontline obstacle system. When it was hit by the Russian remote artillery, the tanks and infantry vehicles dodged and crowded with each other, and became a chaotic group, and ventured into the large deep minefields set up by Russia, and the whole battalion relied on only one Panther 2R with minesweeper shovels to avoid the minefield. The entire battalion relied on a single Panther 2R with a minesweeper to open up a channel in the minefield. Although a BMR-2 minesweeper tank was urgently deployed to reinforce the battalion, it was all destroyed under the Russian combined fire. In the absence of aviation cover, the armored assault group was not equipped with a set of Cheetah .35 self-propelled anti-aircraft guns or Vengeance short-range missiles and other field anti-aircraft systems. Even the Stinger, Starlight, and other man-portable air defense missiles are not carried. Facing the Ka-52 is almost a lamb to be slaughtered. When advancing towards the Russian first-line defense positions, it did not receive continuous and uninterrupted cover from its own artillery, failed to effectively suppress the Russian artillery and front-line reconnaissance systems, and even before it could see the Russian first line of defense, it was crashed into a bloody head, which is simply a messy battle. The Russian-Ukrainian War was the first high-intensity war between industrialized countries since the world entered the new century, and it was also a war that was hard to imagine before. On the one hand, the new weapons announced by both sides in military parades and the international arms trade market are seldom, if ever, put to the test. On the other hand, the grassroots troops of both sides have been inventing and creating their own new conceptual weapons, which are as varied as those of the two world wars. In particular, civilian quadcopter drones are commonly used by both sides, and they have come up with countless new ways to play with them. Recently, the Russians and Ukrainians have been eyeing one of these new varieties, the Traverser. For example, by combining the warhead of an RPG-7 with a Traverser, it can become a simple anti-armor missile. The Traverser is a branch of the multi-rotor unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV, which is actually closer to an ordinary aviation model, and does not have the navigation system, attitude control system, and auto-cruise capability that most multi-rotor UAVs have, and relies solely on the operator, commonly known as the flyer, to watch the real-time flight picture of the aircraft through the FPV goggles, also known as a kind of VR goggles, to control the flight. The flight is controlled by the operator through FPV goggles, also known as a kind of VR goggles. However, because of its simple structure and lack of attitude control system, the Traverser can fly much faster than general multi-rotor drones, which only have a speed of 50 to 70 km per hour, while the Traverser can reach 200 to 250 km per hour, which is known as the Traverser. The Traverser can reach up to 200 to 250 km per hour, which is called the F1 of drones, but because of this, the Traverser's endurance is also very short, generally less than 10 minutes, and a very few high-end models are less than 30 minutes. You need to reduce the flight speed at this time, because there is no automatic stabilization. The Traverser can be used as an ordinary multi-rotor drone. Because of the lack of automatic stabilization, the Traverser can do large-scale maneuvers such as altitude movements and rolls that ordinary multi-rotor drones cannot do, but because of this, the Traverser is also prone to crashes, commonly known as blow ups. Prior to this, some special operations units have attempted to use traversing aircraft to conduct CQB operations, including reconnaissance and physical attacks, ramming, on human targets, as well as carrying explosive bombs and other special operations, which are relatively easy to understand. However, in the Russian-Ukrainian war, both sides have come up with a brand new way of playing the game, so that the traversing aircraft transformed into missiles. In fact, the Ukrainian RKG-3 anti-tank grenades were first used by Ukraine in November 2022 against Russian infantry, but the Ukrainians first used a quadcopter and a PG-7V, rocket-propelled grenade, originally fired from an RPG-7, in a perimeter battle in Bakhmut, known as Artyomovsk in Russia. The Russians also followed suit by linking a quadcopter with the warhead of a PG-7V rocket originally fired from an RPG-7, which was then fused and used as an over-the-horizon attack. Russia followed suit, and the Wagnerian Employment Corps soon had a traversing aircraft mounted with PG-7 rockets and PG-9 anti-armor and OG-9 anti-personnel rounds for the SPG-9 recoilless gun. PG-9 anti-armor rounds and OG-9 anti-personnel rounds were used in the SPG-9 recoilless gun to carry out suicide attacks on Ukrainian vehicles and fortifications, so as to do the same thing to others, which was said to be more effective. Because the operator is flying the Traverser from the first viewpoint, the operator doesn't have to die himself. Wagner's mercenaries even developed their own new way of fighting, using a quadcopter drone as a reconnaissance aircraft to search for targets over the battlefield, and when Ukrainian armored vehicles are found, they will guide the Traverser, which carries anti-armor or anti-personnel ammunition, to attack the target, and the Traverser actually plays the role of the missiles, which results in a rather high cost-effective drones. The drone missile mode of operation is highly cost-effective. And due to the small size of the traversing machine, in the air is not easy to be found, and faster, although tied to the ammunition speed will decline, but an ordinary multi-rotor drone then or much faster, and because it does not produce laser and infrared signals, so the target is very difficult to forewarned of this kind of attack. Coupled with the traversing machine's flying attitude is variable, just rely on the tanks and armored vehicles equipped with their own anti-aircraft machine. Guns is very difficult to shoot it down. In the Russian-Ukrainian war, the unmanned special attack weapon can be called the emergence of a new army, before the Ukrainian use of star chain technology to create unmanned special attack boat sneak attack on naval bases in Crimea, and after the Russia as the same way to use a similar water special attack weapon to blow up the Ukrainian important bridges in Odessa. Cruise missiles are originally airborne unmanned special attack weapons, and now its threshold is rapidly decreasing. The combination of traversing aircraft, FPV glasses, and ammunitions can allow many people to attack outside the field of vision, but the traversing aircraft also has its shortcomings. After all, this is only a civilian unmanned aircraft, and therefore the civilian range of the weak resistance to interference, the fault of the poor load is not the same, therefore, to play the means of civilian unmanned aircraft can be used to play the traversing aircraft, the electronic interference is the best means to use. Electronic interference is the best means to use, the traversing aircraft against this is no solution, can only rely on the suddenness of the attack to compensate. In addition, it usually attacks the sides and rear of armored vehicles, so the grille armor, reactive armor has a protective effect on it. Want to play a decisive role, it does not have that ability. The new design of artificial intelligence is definitely one of the key points of the future war. Instead of crashing, an artificial intelligence attack drone that loses its target signal after being electronically jammed accelerates towards its target and destroys it. In the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, some drones relied on new artificial intelligence software to reduce the success rate of electronic jamming. This artificial intelligence technology, which is being developed by a growing number of Ukrainian drone companies, is one of a number of innovative leaps being made in the Ukrainian domestic drone market. In the western Ukrainian city of Lviv, engineers from Twist Robotics were reported to have demonstrated a test video of artificial intelligence software that could provide a significant upgrade to Ukraine's first-person view, FPV, drones. Ukraine produces thousands of cheap drones every month that can carry bombs but are vulnerable to Russian interference. The new artificial intelligence software allows the drones to remain locked in place, free from electronic interference and physical obstacles, said Twist Robotics co-founder Rostislav Orenkin, adding that once the target is locked in place, the drone is guided by the system, and the drone's sensors will recognize the target's physical characteristics and adjust its flight attitude. The drone will rely on software to lock onto a pre-selected target, even though electronic jamming systems are commonly deployed by the Russians. Even if its target moves, the artificial intelligence software will still help the drone accomplish its mission. Fedorov is understood to be in charge of Ukraine's drone army program, which is designed to maximize the use of reconnaissance and attack drones to offset Russia's huge advantage in air power and artillery. The program has helped Ukraine train more than 10,000 drone operators in the past year and is expected to train another 10,000 in the next 6 months. Russia's air force is estimated to be 10 times larger than Ukraine's, but after Ukraine shot down several Russian jets at the start of the conflict, the Russian Air Force ceased most of its operations. Drones have improved Ukraine's reconnaissance and strike capabilities, as well as the accuracy of its conventional artillery. However, the amount of firepower delivered by drones is much lower than that of fighter jets, so Kiev is still asking for F-16s and other items such as ATACMS, Army Tactical Aerial Missile System, and cluster bombs. Russia has recently responded by creating its own volunteer drone force and introducing new electronic jamming devices. Russia has also used drones against Ukrainian targets and has thwarted Ukrainian counterattacks. The accelerated development of drone technology is worrisome to security experts, as more and more organizations and individuals are using drones for lethal purposes, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, and drug cartels in Mexico. The Ukrainian conflict has led to a simpler weaponization of drones, and while building near-aircraft-sized drones like the US MQ-9 Predator drone is beyond the capabilities of these organizations and individuals, the use of artificial intelligence-assisted software is not. Paul Shar, a drone expert at the Center for American Security, says that once the software is developed, it is fairly easy to proliferate and reuse the software at virtually no cost. Since the outbreak of the Ukrainian war, the Ukrainian military has used a wide range of drones, including military, commercial and homemade drones, to counter Russian attacks, performing tasks ranging from aerial reconnaissance and surveillance to dropping grenades on targets. They also use fast, agile speed drones loaded with rockets or bombs for suicide missions that end with the enemy, making them inexpensive missiles. In an August 2022 video, 2 Ukrainian 93rd Brigade, Lengyel Brigade, drone operators use Fat Shark Tactile FPV, first-person view, video goggles to maneuver their speed drones to attack a house, with one drone attacking and the other filming as the attacking drone bursts through the door and explodes. Anyone who has watched a speed drone race knows that small drones can break through the toughest routes with incredible speed and agility. Operators use footage from the suicide drone's aerial camera to maneuver the weapon. The weapons are easy to assemble, parts are readily available, and the cost is low, often just a few €100. Race drones can easily reach speeds of more than 100 km per hour, and depending on the propellers, batteries, and motors they use, they can carry loads of varying weights, such as the VOG-17 high-explosive grenades widely used by the Ukrainian military, 30mm VOG. The VOG-17M grenade, consisting of a 30mm VOG-17M grenade with a USRAM grenade fuse, and a stabilizing tail assembly when dropped from a drone, and the PG-7 rocket fighting section are widely used by the Ukrainian military, and can be used to launch attacks from hundreds to thousands of meters away. A developer at Black Raven, a team of volunteers responsible for providing aviation technology to the Ukrainian military, said the FPV control system allows the operator to control the drone to the last possible moment before detonation and to launch attacks from multiple directions, resulting in a high degree of accuracy, whereas bombs can only be dropped from above, which is often not as accurate as an FPV-controlled drone. Black Raven's technicians say that their EBOSH suicide drones can stop high above the target in stunt mode and then descend quietly, choosing an optimal path to launch an attack by surprise. The organization showed a video of an EBOSH suicide drone destroying a targeted Muscovite car to demonstrate its lethality. Angry Birds, another Ukrainian volunteer special warfare weapons development organization, said their FPV-controlled suicide drone can carry a 1 kg RKG-3M anti-tank grenade with a top speed of 120 km per hour and a range of 5 km for $800. In a demonstration video, the operator uses the drone to attack a target on an abandoned MTLB armored personnel carrier. Mikhailo Fedorov, Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Digital Transformation. Mikhailo Fedorov, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Digital Transformation of Ukraine, stated that Ukraine will see a dramatic improvement in drone production in February-March 2023. Although he was referring to dedicated attack drones, on January 20, 2023, it was reported that the Kryla Special Unit of the General Directorate of Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense was also fundraising for the purchase of an abandoned MTLB armored personnel carrier target. The Special Forces of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry's General Intelligence Directorate are also in the process of purchasing up to 1,000 FPV racing drones to be modified for suicide attack missions. Compared to an F-16 fighter jet costing nearly $100 million and a missile costing about $3 million each, a drone costing only a few $100s has become an attractive option in the strategy of asymmetric warfare. As a low-cost and efficient weaponry, FPV drones not only play an important role in military operations, but also have a great impact on the pattern of warfare. Although the M113 armored personnel carriers used by the Army are traditional military equipment, they are expensive, which not only creates a huge economic burden, but also shows a weakness when facing low-cost FPV drones. The successful destruction of an APC by an FPV drone highlights the need to strengthen the ability to respond to drones in modern warfare. Prior to the outbreak of the war, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense did not have any mass-produced small drones for distribution to its troops, so in wartime, it could only call upon civilian airplanes in an emergency, but the number was still quite limited. At the beginning of the war, Russia deployed a large number of ground armored troops to attack Kiev. The Ukrainian Territorial Defense Force, TDF, contacted Andriy Pokrysa, a 15-year-old boy with a small aerial camera who lived in a suburb of Kiev, to find out the location of the Russians using the aerial camera in order to keep track of the Russians' movements. Pokrysa and his father spent the night flying the drone around and eventually found the headlights of a Russian convoy. They sent photos of the convoy and their coordinates back to the Ukrainians, and before long, the Russian armored convoy was shelled by distant Ukrainian troops and wiped out. From the Russian-Ukrainian battlefield FPV drone use video, we can summarize that there are mainly the following modes of use by the Russian and Ukrainian sides. 1. Tactical reconnaissance. This kind of mission mainly consists of squad and platoon level tactical teams carrying FPV drones to carry out tactical reconnaissance within 10 kilometers. In the past, in addition to the information support of the brigade level unit, the squad level unit or even the company level unit can only rely on the small detachment/armored reconnaissance vehicle to go out and reconnaissance. Slow and inefficient, the FPV drone greatly enhances the squad level unit's reconnaissance capability, high reconnaissance efficiency, flexible use, to a certain extent, cannot rely on the information support provided by the superior unit to independently carry out reconnaissance combat missions. 2. Artillery calibration. For the Russian and Ukrainian troops with a lower degree of informatization, FPV drones can be used as a cheap alternative to artillery professional observation drones to observe, calibrate, and assess the effectiveness of strikes, thus realizing the informatization of artillery at a low cost. 3. Anti-armor weapons. FPV drone plus RPG armor-breaking warheads, high-explosive bombs, and other modifications into a suicide drone, to all kinds of tanks, armored fighting vehicles to carry out precise casualties. Especially in anti-armor warfare, FPV drones mounted small anti-tank ammunition, by the operator wearing VR glasses, using the handle control, specializing in hitting tanks, armored fighting vehicles in the weak parts, such as the turret and the top of the body, the turret and the body of the turret side or the rear of the bomb rack parts, etc., and the party being attacked by the FPV drones is very difficult to implement an effective interception of this kind of FPV drones. It can be almost said that the attacked party can hardly intercept these FPV drones effectively, which can almost be said to be undefendable. 4. Personnel casualties. From the video footage coming out of the Russian and Ukrainian battlefields, we can see that the Ukrainians used a large number of FPV drones with badminton bombs and fragmentation grenades to bomb Russian infantry detachments in the process of advancing, as well as Russian infantrymen in depressed trenches, pits, and bunkers, especially in the Battle of Towns and Townships and depressed trenches, and to infantrymen hiding in the blind spots of the visual field, such as the inside of the houses and ruins, as well as in the fortification and reverse sloping surfaces, which can form an effective killing force. It was also effective in killing infantrymen in blind areas such as houses, ruins, fortifications, and reverse slopes. In addition, the price of the drone, maintenance costs are relatively lower than manned aircraft, and drone wear and tear will not be casualties, combined with AI technology. Drone swarm tactics will be the key to determine the success or failure of the war. Russia's ZALA group has for the first time publicized the next generation of the Lancet series of drones, which does not have an official name at the moment, but only a factory code name Product 53. The new Lancet Product 53 is equipped with the function of drone swarm combat. It is said that after lifting off, it can implement automatic networking, AI identification, automatic search, automatic attack, and anti-electronic interference capability has also been greatly improved. The swarming Product 53 can determine the highest threat targets, and one by one, the threat level and automatically plan the best mode of attack, for missiles in accordance with the most optimal program to hit 4 targets, which may instantly lead to a reversal of the situation, such as for Ukraine's heavy armored targets, main battle tanks or infantry fighting vehicles, and so on. As long as there is a lot of information, then the missile will be able to determine the optimal angle of impact and the optimal point of impact according to the algorithm, which equipment to hit, and which point to hit, causing the greatest chance of martyrdom. In this way, in the end of the attack route, may not need manpower intervention, relying on the cruise missiles themselves can plan the attack, and the efficiency of the attack is definitely much higher than manpower, if equipped with swarming, distributed search function, then a large number of launches can be carried out after liftoff, automatic networking, in accordance with the optimal search mode to start searching, thereby greatly expanding the search area. Whoever finds the target who will hit. It is not a problem to shoot down the M142 Seamasters and Starlight rockets that are deployed deep in the battlefield. FPV racing drones are small rotor drones that are operated by remote controls and head-mounted displays. They were originally intended for recreational and competitive use, as they are capable of performing a variety of difficult maneuvers and flight paths through the air. These drones usually weigh less than 1 kilogram and can reach a maximum speed of 200 km per hour and a maximum range of 10 kilometers. The military uses these drones on the battlefield, where soldiers load them with mortar rounds, improvised explosives, or directional anti-infantry mines, making them a kind of homemade missile. The ammunition carried by these drones has limited effect on heavily armored main battle tanks, but is a threat to light armored vehicles. More importantly, these drones can fly at high speeds and at low altitudes that are difficult to be detected and intercepted by the enemy air defense system, causing fear and confusion to the enemy and disrupting their operational rhythm and command system. The military's tactic of attacking tanks with mines mounted on the traversing aircraft has the following characteristics. Low cost. These drones cost very little to manufacture, typically less than $150, and are easy to acquire and maintain. In comparison, a Lancet 3 missile costs about 5 million rubles, $70,000, while a Western main battle tank costs millions of dollars. Therefore, even if these drones were shot down or damaged, it would not cause much economic loss to the military. Flexibility. These drones can fly in complex terrain and environments, using buildings, trees, hills, and other obstacles to avoid enemy radar and fire. They are also capable of adjusting their flight altitude, speed, and direction according to the actual situation in order to adapt to different targets and missions. The controllers of these drones are usually close to the front line and are able to obtain timely information and feedback from the battlefield, thus enhancing operational efficiency and accuracy. Psychological effect. These drones are an unpredictable and undefendable threat to the military. They can appear out of nowhere, at any time, causing fear and tension to the enemy. Soldiers have to be constantly on the lookout for these drones to distract them. These drones are also capable of creating noise and smoke to disturb the enemy's sight and hearing. These drone attacks do not cause much damage, but they are extremely insulting and undermine the morale and confidence of the military. The Russian army's tactic of attacking Ukrainian tanks with landmines mounted on traversing aircraft has achieved some success on the battlefield. According to Russian media reports, since September 2022, Russia has destroyed at least 20 Ukrainian armored vehicles, including BTR-wheeled armored vehicles, MTLB tracked armored vehicles, and BMP infantry fighting vehicles. One of the most notable operations took place on May 30, 2023, when a Ukrainian T-84 main battle tank was successfully destroyed by a Russian traverser carrying a targeted anti-infantry mine. The tank was one of the most advanced armored vehicles produced in Ukraine, with heavy composite armor and powerful firepower. However, under the attack of the Russian traverser, it became a living target. According to Russian media reports, that afternoon, near a village on the outskirts of Donetsk, a traverser spotted the tank and quickly flew over, dropping a mine on the tank's turret. After the mine exploded, the tank's turret was torn apart and the tank's interior caught fire, leaving no survivors. The tactic of attacking tanks with mines from a traverser is an innovative and effective asymmetric means of warfare. It demonstrates the adaptability and creativity of military forces in the face of asymmetric national superiority, and serves as a warning to other countries. This tactic also brings some revelation and influence to future wars. Drones will play an increasingly important role in future wars, and tanks and armored vehicles will face more and more threats and challenges. Whether it is military drone swarming tactics, or the assumption that millions of civilian drones will be converted to military use during wartime, and the strategy of using a large number of drones for defense or even counterattack, this asymmetric war mode will become the normal state and characteristic of future wars.